Some of those elements were really easy to articulate, but then you want to give substance behind that. So, how? How does that actually work? What's that going to look like? What is a great people experience? What does that really mean? What's the tangible bits? Because you can write this stuff down in the back of an envelope, but it's not real.
Hi, I'm Belden Mankus. Welcome to The Purposeful Strategist, the podcast that shifts the conversation about purpose and strategy from what organizations should do to what business leaders actually are doing and what they've learned along the way. My guest today is Francesca Lagerberg, Chief Executive Officer of Baker Tilly International, one of the world's largest networks of accountancy and business advisory firms, operating across more than 140 territories. With a global community of independent firms serving corporates, governments, and privately held businesses, Baker Tilly is known for combining technical excellence with a strong commitment to purpose-led growth and long-term client impact. Francesca previously served as Global Leader of Network Capability and as Global Head of Tax at Grant Thornton International. She stepped into the CEO role at Baker Tilly in 2022 at a moment of transformation for the accounting and advisory sector. I'm curious to explore how she's shaping the network's global strategy in a rapidly evolving professional landscape. Francesca, welcome to The Purposeful Strategist.
Thank you so much. A joy to be with you.
Now, it's great to have you here. So if you don't mind, maybe we can just dive straight in. Baker Tilly, world's largest advisory networks. Maybe you can just give us a picture of what it's like today, footprint, core service lines, and kind of clients.
Sure, it's a classic global accounting network. So we're a network of firms. That means that we're committed to work together, but we are all independent firms. We do audit, tax advisory. We do legal where you can. Not every country allows you to do legal as part of that.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
some have rules around it, but it's a professional services firm. We service mid-market clients as our core go-to. We do big, we do little, but we mainly service mid-market. We're 6.8 billion revenue in US dollars. So that means we've got about 50,000 people working under the Baker Tilly brand.
So just so I can understand, you've got these independent firms and they're kind of working together, but then I get this image of like a network over the top of it. Is that, or is it more, I don't know, like eggs in a carton? How does it work?
It is like a network over it. It's like how we're connected together. So each firm, it's the partners or principals' money. They operate in an autonomous way. They're independent in terms of what they offer, but we've all agreed to join up together. So the piece I run is the bit that binds us together. It's that network piece. What centrally makes sense to do together? And that means we look after quality, we look after managing global risk, we look after brand, and we look after global strategy. How do we operate in a way that's effective for all of us?
Right. And beyond you, like in the network bit, I could imagine it could be just you, with an awful lot of running around the globe. But I also imagine that there's a team that does some of what you were talking about, that, sort of establishes standards, helps people coordinate things. What does that team look like?
So we've got a core team of 50-ish of us, and we operate in what we call our global office, although we're scattered around the world. We're where we need to be. But then we also work with experts from our member firms. So we're able to pull on that local expertise. So we have lots of communities of people who are experts in their field who help shape the things that we become. So for any network, it takes a village. You need a lot of people to help build out the things you need. So you pull on local knowledge and then use the global piece to help keep it all working together.
That's great. Thanks. And so, I mean, in simple terms, what's the purpose of Baker Tilly?
No, it's a great question, because I think if we could all encapsulate purpose in a lovely short sentence, it would make it all so much easier. But with real purpose, it's obviously quite deep. It goes longer. But at its simplest, it's about making sure that we're making good decisions for ourselves, but most importantly for our clients and our people, that help make informed tomorrows. So in a world where trust is a little bit more ragged than it used to be, where integrity really matters, we want to make sure that we're helping our clients and our people with that decision-making process so that what they do today really does have a thoughtful impact for the future. That's our North Star.
I'm going to want to come back to trust in a bit, because I suspect in that world you're in, and particularly in a network of independent firms, that might be a trickier thing than it's tricky enough anywhere, but a trickier topic. But even before we get to that, maybe you could just tell us a little bit about your journey into the CEO role and why you went to Baker Tilly and what you were hoping to do and how all that's worked out so far.
For sure. I've worked in professional services most of my career. I've been in the Big Four. I've been in mid-tier firms. I've run my own business. I've worked in industry. So I'm the classic move around every 5 years individual that most people tend to be these days. But I was that many years ago. And I worked for a long time in a very strong mid-market firm. And I was headhunted to come to Baker Tilly about 4 years ago, I suppose. It's roughly how long ago it was. And I must admit, what really attracted me was ambition, like-minded people, a real opportunity to build something with the experience I've had, but what I've been able to see. And actually, it's been such a joyous experience, actually. I really love the network. I love the fact that I'm working with intelligent people who are really ambitious for themselves and for the people around them. And also, I mean, the accounting profession, I know we have this terrible image of being sort of quite dull and sort of bean counters, but it's such a great profession because you work in an environment where it's all about helping. It's about helping your clients, about helping your people reach their full potential. And it's just a crazy, interesting, volatile, wild ride in the accounting profession at the moment. So it is a bit of a privilege to be part of it at this stage in my life.
If I could just draw out and kind of underscore one thing you said in that I think is really important is the whole question of making good decisions. That in the world we're in, it's so complex, so chaotic, and so, in some senses, contested. People disagree on what should we even be trying to do here. That I think helping people make good decisions is really important.
Because you don't always make the right decision, because history can prove you wrong. Gosh, if we were all crystal ball gazers and had some magic talent, wouldn't that be lovely? But good decisions is I think it's really important. You're making the right decisions in the moment with the facts you've got, and you're doing it with the good intent. And then even if not everything proves to be exactly how you would want it to be, those decisions stack up. That this is the best you could have done at that stage with the knowledge that was available. It's
somewhat maybe in line with that then. Interested to hear what your current strategy is and what were the decisions you had to make along the way to get to that? Who got involved? How did it all work?
Well, it's very current for us at the moment because we're just about to launch our new global strategies. We've had one that took us to 2026 and we were lucky enough to meet the objectives of that actually a year early. And so been working on our new global strategy for about 18 months. So these things take time. They need to marinate. They need to get a lot of stakeholder involvement. They need a lot of testing to make sure they work in a practical sense. So we've been working on it really hard. We launch in the middle of March. And this is a network strategy. A lot of our individual firms will have a really well thought through local strategy that makes total sense in their market. This is how we work together as a network. And we have engaged a lot of stakeholders. We have a board of governors who represent 15 of our really engaged firms. So they've been fundamental to it. But we've talked to many people across our organisation, but we've definitely stress tested it with clients, with external stakeholders, with people that we just really have a good connection with and go, what do you think of this? This is what we're thinking. Do you think that resonates? And we will launch that. And we've got a sort of really detailed playbook as well about how to implement it. Because one of the joys of a strategy, everyone can do a brilliant strategy. That's not hard. Actually doing it is the tough yards. So our next phase is about how we execute and really rigorous about how we try and bring it to life.
So given that you're going to launch it in March, are you in a position to kind of at least tease some of the key themes of it?
I can give you a little trailer because actually most of it we'll be talking about internally because a lot of it is really relevant for our people, but perhaps less interesting to an unsuspecting world. But the big pieces for us is how do we marry all the different things that are going on? So there's some big metrics. We're $6.8 billion US, as I mentioned. And there's a growth metric in there, which will be about 12 billion by 2030. And that's an outcome. That's not an end game in itself. It's an outcome.
That's sorry, I don't have to tell you this. That's ambitious.
Yeah, very ambitious. But also on the basis of the information that I have today, very, very achievable. It's a stretch. That's not a slam dunk, but it's a stretch, but it's really achievable. And the way that all the different parts of our network are going, very, very achievable indeed. But But behind that is how would that happen? What would that be about? So we're really clear about the clients we want to serve, our ideal kind of client. We're really clear about the people experience, which to us is massive. And then we're very, very clear about how we're going to use technology to enable us to do that as well. So there's lots of strands within it, and then lots of detailed service line strategies as well. But the end game is that we create an environment where a mid-market client would absolutely want to talk to us if it was looking to either change its provider or look for a new provider or have a different service. Our people feel that they're in an organisation they're proud to be part of. That's huge. But also, if you're looking about which organisation might be a good place for me to find as my home, we would like to hope that we're creating an environment where people will really want to be part of our journey.
And if you take those three, was there a moment in the process, you say it took about 18 months. I could imagine those three might have come to the fore very early, and most of the 18 months was kind of building support. Equally, I could imagine it took a long time. There were 15 candidates for what might have become the three. It was only towards the end that it all somehow fell into place. What was the sort of flavor of that journey?
That's such a lovely question. I think our people-first approach took about 15 seconds because we're a people business. You haven't got great people. I appreciate that the rise of tech and the ability of tech to do so many things, but you haven't got great people, you haven't got a business. So the people bit came very, very early on. How we use tech, I think everybody is still working out exactly what that looks like. Some bits are easy, some bits are much more complicated, and it's changing at a pace that's extraordinary. So I think some of those elements were really easy to articulate, but then you want to give substance behind that. So, how? How does that actually work? What's that going to look like? What is a great people experience? What does that really mean? What's the tangible bits? Because you can write this stuff down on the back of an envelope, but it's not real. And quite rightly, people want, where's the substance? How are you going to deliver? What does that look like? What can we do quick? And what actually is a longer term play? So technology is a great one because everybody knows you need to be tech enabled. You need tech savvy people, you need tech curious people. But what does that really look like? And then when you're talking internationally, how do you make sure that you're aligned in your decision making? You have common technology, but also how do you actually use it? Because I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I get tech and it's fantastic and I use 10% of it. So how do you really make sure you're maximizing that investment, but also giving people the skill set to use it?
Yeah. If I could pick up on one bit of the tech angle of that, and I almost feel like I need to apologize because you probably knew this was coming, but AI, because a lot of what I hear people talking about AI, and granted, it is changing and it's not entirely clear what impact it's going to make. But I hear a lot of people talking about it as a way to take cost out, and some people fearing that and some people desiring that. But I don't hear nearly as much conversation about how do we use it to improve what we deliver, to help people make even better decisions. Just wondering, kind of where all that lands in your conversations.
There's such a huge amount where good technology, makes your life easier because it takes away some of the things that are a bit more mundane or actually harder to capture, but tech's very good at it. A simple example would be you're running a meeting, you want some minutes from that meeting. Tech's very good at that. Then it can give you a short version, it can give you a massive version, but who likes writing minutes? Literally nobody, I think. So it's very good for that sort of thing. But also in terms of the opportunity piece, some people just say it's a cost saver, everyone should reduce their fees because of it, all that kind of stuff. But in reality, what it does is it frees up people to spend the time doing the value add. So if you're doing something that's relatively rote, relatively routine, can be done effectively with tech. Not everything can, but some things can. Now, if you can do that a bit quicker, maybe even do it with a little bit less error involved in it, possibly. The first time you do it is right rather than the second time. That frees up the individual to have more time to analyze the data, think about what does that really mean? How does that work? So it's a very good way of helping you do things more effectively. And I know there's a lot of fear about will jobs just disappear, particularly for entry-level individuals? Some of that work would traditionally have been the work that they did. Does that mean that they won't have the experience, they won't get the opportunities, they won't get the jobs? But there's just so much out there that still needs humanity. And actually, you get a very bright person and you give them a really dull thing to do for 6 months. That is not a great experience for them. So can you get them to do the more interesting stuff quicker? Can you use tech to help you? Simulated learning, which quite frankly I think is amazing, that can help you get better at doing things that previously you would need a bit longer to do. I'm not saying that we're all going to find the answers. It's going to be super easy, but there's a lot there that I think is really, really positive.
Yeah. You used a phrase in there that I think I know what it means, but just to check, simulated learning. Just if you could say a bit more about what that is and how you're either using it or planning to use it.
So there are many ways to do it, but an example, here I am talking to you, which is joyous. How about if I create you as an avatar and I'm just chatting to you and I'm practicing, I'm going, right, I'm going to have to speak on this topic. Let's have a little chat. And I'm chatting to you and you reply to me just like you're replying to me now. Thoughtful questions, interesting insight. And at the end of that little exercise, you then feed back to me. You go, well, that was all right. I wish you talked about this. You didn't look me in the eye. You didn't mention my name. You didn't give me a sense that you actually were listening to what I said. Or that wasn't bad. I actually felt that you were attentive. You were asking good questions. You were obviously responding. That's the sort of stuff you learn in life. But with simulated learning, you can replicate that. So somebody who is going out to a client for the first time, super scary, not quite sure what that's going to look like, need a little practice. And they can do it several times, get a bit of confidence. But a lot of it is about simulating a real life example, but using technology. And it's just mind-blowingly good. And it's early days. It will be so much better in a few years' time. But it's pretty interesting.
I tell you what I love about that, Francesca. It's been a little bit of a bugbear of mine for a while. People in business talk a lot about performance. You know, we've got to get performance. If you think about the performing arts, people care a lot about performance, but they do an awful lot of rehearsal.
They do.
And in business, you often don't get much rehearsal time. And what I hear you saying is, here's a way to do it. Which is really brilliant. Yeah.
But I was at a concert last night. Amazing confidence. Absolutely brilliant. She's going to have spent, 6-7 months preparing to do this tour. And yet in a business scenario where the money, the transaction, the importance, the impact for the business is just as important. And all you've done is you've read a few notes and you've gone, well, I'll do a quick Google. I'll talk to someone who might know. And you're going, no. And I totally agree with you. Performance is nice. But practice is like public speaking. The best public speakers still practice.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Looking back on the 18 months, if you had to go through the process again, would you do it the same way? Or are there a few things that you think, I might change that?
A lot of it I would definitely do again. The stakeholder piece, I feel really good about. It helped that they were so engaged and thoughtful and gave such great information. That felt like we really got that input from the beginning. It wasn't my strategy or the team's strategy or even just the global office strategy. It was a network strategy. That felt really important. I think one of the things we realized quite early on was that when you've got a group of people, you get a lovely bounce, you get a really nice cadence to it. But sometimes the one-to-ones gave us the gems because they'd reflected a bit more. So by the end of the process, we were doing group meets and one-to-ones. I think I'd have brought the one-to-ones in earlier just to get that deeper dive with them.
Coming back to something you talked about earlier, trust. So you've got this network around the globe. Clearly, trust is a big thing. And I can imagine that's both internally. Do the different members sort of start from a place of trust? Around this idea of trust, people often say trust is earned. I've seen a different point of view, which I've got a lot of time for, which is trust is granted. You start from trust. You don't have to earn it.
Trust.
You start from trust. And obviously with your clients, I'm just wondering, how does all that fit into the way you think of the network and the way you sort of lead and manage it?
No, it's a huge part. I mean, from to slightly flip it from a client perspective, the client, you have to build that trust, undoubtedly. I mean, they're going to assume you can do the job. I mean, if you can't do the job, they wouldn't have given it to you. But then that relationship build is, I think there's a huge amount of trust. Oh, they delivered on time. They did what we asked them to do. They didn't try to on-sellers. They were thoughtful, but they over-exceeded expectations, all that kind of stuff, part of the trust build. The advice they gave us was sensible advice. So that bit with the client, I think, is gradual build. You start off going, oh, I'm quite comfortable with that. Oh, no, I might go back to them. But I think as a network, the trust piece, we try and make sure that people know if anyone joins our network as a member firm in our network, you can trust them because they've gone through a process. They've been brought in, they've been reviewed, they've DD, and we quality check. So you've got a sense, they can deliver. But then there's that next bit, well, they can deliver, but can they deliver all the things they want? Can they deliver like me? Because I think we all in our heart of hearts go, I reckon I can deliver the best. Are they as good as me at doing this? And it's showcasing that, they can. And actually, the human connection, be that on Teams, be it on Zoom, be it on however you do it. One of the things that I really like is, particularly when we go to global pitches, the clients that we're pitching to, potential clients we're pitching to, always go, oh, you seem to quite like each other, as if that's a surprise. And you go, well, yeah, because they actually know each other. It's not just that they've casually met in the foyer going into the client. They've prepared, but they probably met each other in an event, a conference, a community gathering, call of maybe a technical call. They've done things together, gone, yeah, actually, these guys, they get it, they understand, and they're treating the client as a network client, not just as a client of a single firm. But I'm not going to pretend it's always perfect, and I'm not going to pretend everybody is as open to that concept to begin with. Sometimes it takes a few transactions to go, yeah, that's a good firm. Yeah, I'm happy with them.
And how do you deal with the situation which must occur, even if they're infrequent, where it isn't quite working? Either two firms that you need, that are in the network that you really do need to get on somehow aren't, or somebody lets the network as a whole down one way or another. That seems to be one of the more difficult things for anybody to deal with. How do you manage to deal with that?
Yeah, people are people. They fall out, they misunderstand each other, they're busy and they don't quite capture the moment. So the main thing is to get the two parties talking. And very often that in itself solves it. They have the conversation, they explain what it is that's frustrating them or annoying them or hasn't happened. That's the most effective piece, and that's usually resolves things. But if that doesn't resolve things, to stop it going into a spiral, we do sometimes from Global Office get involved in that conversation, maybe mediate a little bit if it's necessary. That'd be a more serious event that would warrant something of that. But very often it's just a case of somebody who's stepping back from it and going, we need to move on. It's like families, isn't it? It's like warring siblings, and then it passes over and everyone's completely forgotten about it in a few months' time.
Well, also, I think sometimes it's a really important thing to get people to think about, which is which universe do you want to be living in? Because you can determine that. Do you want to be in the one where we're fighting all the time? Or do you want to be in the one where we kind of cut each other a little bit of slack and sort of find ways to keep working together?
100%.
And that's entirely up to a human being.
Yeah, your reaction you can control. You can't easily control the outcome, but you can certainly control your reaction to it.
Interested to know a bit about the shifts you might be seeing and what clients expect from their accounting and advisory partners. What's different? Because the whole world's much more complex and challenging and pressured. And, what does the difference look like?
There's a few thematics that you see coming through. I think that's sort of volatile, fast changing. We've got tariffs, we've not got tariffs, we've got tax changes, we've not got tax changes. I think there's a lot more desire to just get some certainty. And certainty is hard. Sometimes there is no certainty. And you go back to that point we were talking about earlier is, can you make good decisions? Can you make good decisions on the information that is truly available? And sometimes it's about good guesses as well. You don't always have the facts. But you're doing it with the right process, the right understanding, the right knowledge. So there's that piece where clients are just going, please, just no idea what's going on. Please, can you help me? That's a really interesting thematic where it's more of a case of I could not do anything, but that isn't a long-term strategy for me. So what are the things I could potentially do? You're seeing that quite a lot. And then you are seeing some organisations just going, cost really matters here. We're trying to manage our costs in an uncertain world. So we want to really narrow down what we're looking for. Let's just do that bit. and then the other bits can follow. And I think that's a really interesting shift.
So when you say narrow down, you mean in terms of what the services they're looking for from Baker Tilly?
And it could be as simple as, well, we think we can do this phase of this. Can we do things in stages? Or also, I really thought we were going to do all of these things going forward, and it's just not going to happen. Please don't keep trying to sell me stuff. Let's be really thoughtful about where I'm at. If you're going to come in and go, here's 87 other things we could be doing for you, it's not a conversation I want to have with you. But what is the value I'm going to get? And I think that value conversation becomes more important in these sorts of times, because actually the value may not be the thing the client was immediately thinking about. The value proposition might sit in another piece. Well, if you're not going to do it all in phase all together and you're going to do it in phases, where's the value piece, which is the bit that's really going to give you the best value today?
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things I think I've been seeing, probably only in the last few months, is people very much in the place you're talking about, which sort of says, well, the world may be kind of crazy in some ways. And it's fine when the world goes crazy to go, let's just kind of pump the brakes for a second. Let's just take it slow for a few minutes. But equally, at some point, we got to go. So what can we do that isn't going to be crazy, that's going to make sense? That if we look back on 6 years or 6 months or even 6 minutes, we're going to go, that was a good call right then based on what we know. That definitely resonates.
And also sometimes the right answer is to do nothing, but being comfortable that it's not going to land you in a place where you're going to go, I really wish I hadn't done that. And I think it's about having a conversation about what are the implications, what are the choices, pros and cons of all the choices, but also with a real mind to what's the best advice that you can give me. And that advice sometimes is doing nothing is the right way to go right now. And I think when a business is having trouble, it's really in difficult times, it remembers the advisor who got where they were at, understood where they were at, and really saw the fact that now wasn't the right time for some of those things. There's an honesty to that, as opposed to, oh my Lord, I need to get some fees, let's push ahead. Yeah. It's that empathizing with the client's real situation.
You mentioned almost in passing when you were talking about the 12 billion kind of, I won't even say target, outcome. You do see it as an outcome. Is that, kind of, well, we've got this strategy, 3 big kind of themes. If we just pursue that, we think we'll get there. Or are there some other things you're thinking, actually, there's 1 or 2 other things we got to fit into the kind of the recipe to get there?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, to get to not quite doubling in size, but close in a 5-year span, it's quite, it's quite punchy.
It's chunky,
as they say. You're not going to do that all with organic growth. It's just not going to happen. So there's an inorganic growth, potentially M&A piece, or a growth within your service line offerings, right, or the depth of those service line offerings. So that's very much part of an inorganic strategy. If we were just going to stay organic, that wouldn't unlikely to be achievable. Yeah. And then also the reality is that there's so many moving parts in an organization like ours. You need a lot of them to go well. Not all of them, but you need a lot of them to go in a good direction. So say, Lord forbid, we had another COVID, that would blow a lot of things off course. So there's a sort of a reality in there that it isn't going to come from one area, one big move. It's going to be a number of things. So a few spinning plates in there that do need to coincide. But given the knowledge we have, the opportunities that are ahead, and the forecasting that we're able to do, because 5-year forecasting is proving to be quite a tricky thing to do. It's aspirational, but it's not unrealistic.
Yeah. In a network like you're leading, what does inorganic growth look like? Is it the constituent parts of the network acquiring something? Is it, there might be a whole other network out there that we want to merge with, or how, what level does that happen?
There's a real mixture there. Most of our merger activity happens at a local level. So we have a fantastic deal last year with our branded Baker Tilly firm in the US, did a lovely deal with another great organisation called Moss Adams. That was huge, one of the biggest deals in the accounting profession for a very, very long time. So you get a lot of those traditional, what I call merger and acquisition pieces. But then you've also got a firm that brings in a new team. It may be just, it opens a new office. I mean, that all kind of falls under that inorganic growth area. And yeah, it's not beyond the bounds of possibility that you look to join up with another network or another grouping that's perhaps a regional grouping. But they're more tricky to do. Often the synergies aren't there, or just the politics of getting it over line are complicated. Yeah. But
Yeah.
They're all things that we would look at, but it needs to be a great cultural fit. It needs to be aligned with what we're trying to do. We wouldn't just do it to grow. Growth just for growth's sake is a fool's game. It's got to be profitable. It's got to be sustainable. It's got to make sense, and it can't ruin your culture.
Yeah. If we could come back to you just for a minute. So as you mentioned, you've sort of built a career moving around a bit, different leadership roles in different firms. How's that experience shaped your perspective on talent, particularly the issue of attracting and retaining sort of the next gen, the next tranche of people coming into the profession?
That's such an interesting question, because I think it has really shaped my view, because I'm not a lifer. I'm not someone who's stayed in one place. And it's just been a product of the opportunities that I had. I got some great opportunities outside of where I was. So I kind of assume that people aren't going to stay somewhere forever. And some do, but I assume that if you're going to get great talent, you shouldn't be worried if they leave you in a good way. And they're going to be a great advocate for you. And they might give you work. They might go, I love working Baker Tilly. They were brilliant. Let's bring them in as our auditor or our tax advisor or our advisor in general. So I don't think that's a problem. I also think in terms of the partnership model really is predicated on people leaving. You take in lots of people at the bottom and then you kind of assume they're going to go. But I think the world is shifting from that pyramid into a diamond shape. You can take on slightly fewer, but really hope to keep more. But to keep more, you have to offer great opportunities. So what made me leave places was I got a better opportunity elsewhere. Would I have stayed in some of those places, which I've no regrets of anywhere I ever worked? Would I have stayed there if there'd been a great opportunity for me there? Yeah, probably I would. So how do you create career choices for people that if they opt to stay with you for 10 years rather than 5 years, it's because there's something really worthwhile for them?
Yeah. No, I think that's a challenge, not just for professional services firms, but I think almost any kind of organization that wants good people is how do you create opportunities internally while also making it a career choice that makes sense for everybody and isn't a problem to go somewhere else. Anything we haven't touched on that you'd like to chat about for a minute, or anything you'd like to share with our listeners?
You've asked me such great questions. I've really enjoyed it. So thank you for that.
Well, likewise.
I think one of the there's probably maybe just two pieces is that in terms of the accounting profession, it's still an amazing profession. And we're forever being told that we're going to be dinosaurs and overtaken by everything, technology, other organizations, startup, who knows what it's going to be. But it is still a really strong profession. It's got integrity at the heart of it. You can make an impact. You can help businesses and people have good results. You can create a great client experience. So as a profession, it's still a really wonderful profession. It's not the dusky old Monty Python sketch of 30 years ago. There's just so much of richness within it. And I think we should be, as a profession, we probably should be prouder about what we are and what we offer. And in a world where there's a lot of very sexy looking professions out there, accounting still provides a really, really good base, good foundation and good career. So that's a huge piece. And then I think there's a whole piece about leadership, which is such a massive topic, isn't it? It's just a ridiculously large topic. But in the world today, you do need to have leaders at all levels, because I think a leader sitting on your reception is a leader. They're probably the biggest role ambassador for your organization, but also that empathy, that listening, that coaching mentality, all of those elements, that's what great leaders look like today. And the more that we can do to help enhance those skills, support people to build those skills and be very alive to what we need to keep getting better, that seems vital to me.
Without in any way wanting to disagree with your point about leadership, which I do agree with, particularly the sort of leadership happens at all levels. If I could just probe a little bit around the question of management, and the reason I'm even positing it is, it feels to me that we've almost ended up in a place where it's sort of leadership good, management bad. And yet a lot of what goes on in leadership seems to me touches on a whole bunch of issues that we've been talking about. So just curious how it shows up, particularly in that sort of, the network team, the 50
Yeah, management is such a huge, I think management gets given a bit of a dirty word sort of feeling.
Completely agree.
If you leave a job, not because you've had a great opportunity, but because you go, I really want to leave this job, this is terrible, it's usually because you're line manager. Good managers are good leaders, but management is such an important part of how the day-to-day works. I often feel that if you're in an environment where management is both respected, it's well-trained, they feel supported, the organisation works better anyway. And there's nothing bad about being a manager, because it is a fundamental leadership position, but also it is on the ground. It's the piece that's most real. It's the bit that ensures that your day is good or your day is bad sometimes. That's where management comes in.
Yeah, no, absolutely agree with that, Francesca. Can I again say thank you for joining us, for sharing your journey? And a couple of things stand out from our conversation, but one is, if you don't mind my repeating it, the ambition of doubling in 5 years. Just in a people business, it's not going to be easy, but it sounds like you're ready for it. But also some of the thoughts you've shared about kind of how organizations work, trust, and the importance of conversations. So thank you for joining us.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you very much indeed for asking me.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of The Purposeful Strategist. In addition to being available on our website, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. If you enjoyed this episode, please do follow us and leave us a 5-star review. It helps others find the podcast. Thanks again, and join us soon for the next episode of The Purposeful Strategist.